Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel, and welcome to Goldeneye, where today we'll be ranking every weapon in the game in order to celebrate the game's re-release to Xbox and Switch. The rules of this ranking are as follows. Weapons are judged single-wielded. Just because the club often comes in pairs does not mean it will be viewed more favourably in this ranking. I may talk about dual wielding with certain weapons, and I may show weapons being dual wielded, but I do not rank them based on how well they work when paired. And the other rule is a weapon's placement will not be based on how difficult it is to obtain, which gives all weapons, a fairer chance. And finally, all weapons were recorded on 00 Agent difficulty, except for the hand grenade and the timed mine, which are on Agent, because their combat effectiveness in flat out gunfights is not good. So, without further ado, let's get into this. In 31st place we have, to absolutely no one's surprise, the Club. Based on the Scorpion, this gun is an absolute joke, so much so it's evolved into one of the most well-known video game guns of all time. The Club is unwieldy, noisy, inaccurate, slow, pitifully weak. The simple fact of the matter is that the Club shares an ammo pool with the PP7, which the player has or can get in every mission, and is substantially more effective in every single scenario than the Club is. I feel the ultimate way of displaying this gun's uselessness is to tell you that if you turn enemy damage up to 1000% of its usual value, you still won't die in one hit to a Club. In 30th place we have Unarmed. Unarmed in Goldeneye is perhaps one of the worst melee attacks in any video game, but it's still better than the Club for two reasons. One, Unarmed can be used for stealth purposes if you find yourself without a silenced weapon, which is something the Club can't do. And two, in a multiplayer match, if one person is unarmed and the other person is using a Club, in a fair and even match, the unarmed man will win the majority of the time. So, Unarmed sucks, but it still isn't as bad as the Club. In 29th place we have another cool unarmed reskin, the Hunting Knife. It is actually statistically better than Unarmed, doing more damage, and it can kill multiple enemies with one swipe, but it's still a Goldeneye melee attack and therefore is similar to other well-known James Bond activities, like contracting herpes or watching diamonds last forever. In 28th place we have the Timed Mine, which is simply a mine with a 5-second fuse. The timed mine can stick to surfaces, but this is problematic because sometimes the timed mine will just slide about instead of sticking, and with a 5-second long fuse you can't afford to lose that precision. The same thing happens with the proximity mine and the remote mine, but it seems to be far more common with the timed mine. The long fuse means that this weapon is relatively ineffective in the fast-paced multiplayer of Goldeneye, and is also poor in campaign because the fuse is ridiculously long, and as it was with the Club, the PP7 is better. In 27th place we have the Hand Grenade, which is, as a technicality, the most common weapon in the game, being able to appear in all levels except down. However, the chance of actually finding one is quite low, as in most levels guards rarely throw grenades, because this is Soviet Russia, and hand grenades are expensive and therefore they're for looking at rather than throwing. Hand grenades are more useful than timed mines as they can be bounced around corners and cooked. The bouncing around corners is particularly useful, as guards won't react to grenades landing near them unless they also see Bond throw it, so you can cheese some difficult areas with decent grenade usage. However, grenades are limited by the fact that there is no dedicated grenade button, which harms their overall effectiveness. Simply put, the PP7 is better. In 26th place we have the Throwing Knife, a weapon exclusive to Bunker 2. The throwing knives are very weak, often taking 3 hits to down a target, only suited for near point-blank engagements, and are about as accurate as a Sunday Sport article, which all add up to make a properly unhelpful weapon, especially in a challenging level such as Bunker 2. They are quiet and somewhat usable as a general purpose weapon, which puts them above the previous entries on this list, but they aren't very effective at all. In 25th place, we ask ourselves the big question: what does well-known secret agent James Bond do when he's waiting for his martini to be shaken and for his woman to undress? He plays on his Game Boy, of course, which brings us neatly to the Taser Boy. The Taser Boy is surprisingly good. It can one-shot dudes to the head, take out security cameras, and has surprisingly good range. Not amazing range, but more than a watch laser, which surprised me. And, like the Moonraker laser, it has unlimited ammunition. In 24th place we have the Watch Laser, which is a short-range laser weapon. It has several advantages, such as the deadly accuracy, no need to reload and continuous fire, but is held back by its shockingly low range, which is only slightly more than a melee attack. The laser is especially effective in short-range levels like Train, which is conveniently the only place it appears in the game, but it struggles should you try and use it in regular combat. In 23rd place we have the Tank Cannon. The tank itself is insanely overpowered, reducing the damage the player takes by a substantial amount, and improving the player's movement speed and allowing the player to create some good hard cover wherever they please. However, the tank cannon is relatively poor. The explosion is generous, but the fire rate is very, very slow, and the tank shell has enormous projectile drop, which harms the effectiveness of the cannon no end. Really, the best way to use a tank is to drive around firing a KF-7 Soviet out of the top, because not only is it more effective, it's also way, way cooler. In 22nd place we have the shotgun, loosely based on the Remington 870, and is a weapon which seems like a little bit of an afterthought to me. It never appears in the campaign, and is really just very nasty. It's technically less accurate and weaker than the Club, but if the cone of pellets that it fires can be very deadly up close, doing as much damage as a Cougar Magnum if all pellets hit. It's held back by its 5-round capacity, plodding fire rate, and general ineffectiveness at range. And also its general inconsistency. I've had several times where all 5 pellets have hit, and some basic enemies like Russian infantry have just kind of shrugged it off, which they wouldn't be doing if a Cougar Magnum had hit them. Additionally, the shotgun is tied with the tank cannon as being the loudest weapon in the game. The Goldeneye shotgun does, however, deserve merit for actually using the shells on top of the gun if you run out of ammo. In 21st place we have the automatic shotgun, which is somewhat of a misnomer, as it has exactly the same fire rate as the plodding regular shotgun, despite being supposedly self-loading. I do believe you can hold down the trigger to fire repeated shots with the auto shotgun, which you can't with the regular shotgun, but it's still the same fire rate. The auto shotgun is very loosely based on the SPAS 12, although it has wooden furniture, no stock, and is all around incredibly inaccurately modelled, and also quite lazily modelled compared to the other high quality, for the time, Goldeneye models. The auto shotgun is better or equal to the shotgun in every way, although it is still held back by the 3 main issues that plagued the regular shotgun, those being the 5-round capacity, range, and woeful fire rate. In 20th place we have the rocket launcher, which is based very loosely on the humorously named Chinese Type 69 RPG, nice, which is in turn a derivative of the famous RPG-7. The rocket launcher is a powerful and accurate long-range explosive weapon, and holds the distinction of being the only explosive weapon with a decently accurate flight path, as both the tank cannon and grenade launcher have incredibly strong projectile drop. However, the rocket launcher is held back by its single round capacity, poor ammunition reserve at only 3 rockets, and the terribly slow projectile speed, which, whilst not too problematic in single player, makes the weapon unusable at long-range multiplayer engagements, which is where it really should have shined. Combine this with an incredibly distinctive firing sound, which allows players plenty of notice to take cover, this weapon is all around less useful than it should have been. In 19th place we have the DD-44 Dostovai, which is based on the Tokarev TT-33 and is the first weapon on this list that is actually worth using in a general combat scenario. The DD-44 is powerful and has a larger magazine than its rival, the PP-7, but falls down due to its noisiness and, crucially, its inaccuracy. However, that's not to say that the Dostovais aren't fun to use, as some of my fondest memories are running around archives with a pair of Dostovais just murdering everybody. It may be worse than the PP-7, it may be cheap and Russian, just like the people who use it, but they appear in pairs quite often. When paired, they're very nice. In 18th place we have the Golden Gun. The Golden Gun is an instant one-hit kill to every enemy in the game, and is laser accurate, passing even the PP-7 in this regard. However, the Golden Gun is held back enormously by its single-shot magazine, which makes reloads frequent and means that you just can't control a crowd well enough to really do anything. On sparsely populated maps like Statue and Jungle, it works well, but try using this in Silo and you'll feel like your face has just been used to paint road markings. In 17th place we have the Remote Mine. The Remote Mine is a very useful explosive simply because you can choose when to detonate it. You can use them as traps by baiting enemies through a doorway and then blowing it to smithereens, but the distinctive feature of the Remote Mines is the ability to quick detonate them without using the detonator item, by pressing A and B on the N64 or A and Y on the Xbox simultaneously. This way the player has complete control over the fuse time, allowing for them to function like grenades that you don't have to cook, or as impact explosives if you'd like. The Remote Mine is also perfect for demolitions and general exploderizing of stuff that you don't like, such as the Conservative Party or Diamonds Are Forever. It's not a gun, so it gets marked down on this list, but in terms of offensive explosives, you can't do much better. In 16th place we have the Grenade Launcher, which is loosely based on the MGL and TGL grenade launchers. I'm open to debate over whether the Grenade Launcher or the Remote Mines are better, and to be honest I think it depends on the situation. The Grenade Launcher is a powerful semi-automatic explosive weapon with a 6-round revolving cylinder, which makes it much better than the Rocket Launcher when it comes to general combat effectiveness. The grenade rounds will explode on impact with the floor, but will bounce any number of times off walls and ceilings, should you be good enough to exploit this. This makes the skill ceiling of the grenade launcher incredibly high and the possibilities nearly endless. In 15th place we have the Phantom, which is based on the Spectre and is such an awfully forgettable weapon. It isn't actually too bad, being essentially a more powerful but less accurate version of the D5K. The Phantom's standout feature is the 50-round magazine, which is the second highest in the game behind the RCP-90. However, the Phantom's inaccuracy is an issue, as it is too slow to warrant the inaccuracy, meaning that the D5K will have a consistently faster time to kill and will stand less chance of hitting scenery or hostages, both of which are major considerations, seeing as the Phantom only appears in Frigate. In 14th place we have the Sniper Rifle, which is a very interesting weapon. The weapon's damage is very low for a sniper rifle, being comparable to the PP-7, but it makes up for this by being laser accurate and fast firing with little recoil. The sniper rifle has a variable zoom, which can be used to pick off targets from a long range, with its maximum effective range really being only hampered by the render distance. At long ranges, however, the sniper rifle has considerable sway, which makes hitting targets an ordeal, especially on a wobbly N64 joystick. The rifle is also the only gun not to be able to use auto-aim. Overall, in the right situations, a trained sniper will make good use of this thing, but its poor damage and expected lack of versatility stop it from climbing any higher up the rankings. In 13th place we have the KF-7 Soviet, which is based loosely on the AKS-47. The KF-7 is the mainstay of the early levels of the game, used extensively by Soviet soldiers, who employ them rather well. The KF-7 has a slow fire rate but does good damage, and he is very versatile with a decent zoom range. The KF-7 can be fired in full auto by holding the trigger, 3-round burst by tapping the trigger, and then semi-auto by tapping the trigger when zoomed in. The KF-7 is relatively inaccurate, however, especially when fired in long bursts, but at the end of the day, it works everywhere the PP-7 doesn't, which means that in the early levels you'll have a foolproof loadout that works every time. In 12th place we have the PP-7, which is based off a Walther PPK. The PP-7 is fast firing and superbly accurate, although in the later levels, against stronger enemies like the ANUS Special Forces, the PP-7 can be too weak to be an effective weapon. The 7-round magazine is plenty for smaller groups of enemies, but it can be a drawback when faced with droves of them. The PP-7 effectively acts as the jack of all trades in this game, and being available in every level is what all guns should be compared against. In 11th place we have the D5K Deutsch, which is based on the MP5K. The D5K is a common versatile weapon usually found in the hands of the ANUS Marines, and it's the most accurate automatic weapon in the game, and it does decent damage, although its fire rate isn't as high as its main rival, the SMG. The D5K can often be found dual-wielded, and if you have a pair of them, your enemies are going to be in so much pain they'll think they're watching Diamonds Are Forever. Overall, it serves as a practical and competent weapon that is consistently powerful throughout the entire game. In 10th place we have the silenced D5K. The silenced D5K is really not as good as maybe it should have been, as it's disappointingly inaccurate, especially compared to its main rival, the silenced PP-7, which is also quieter than the D5K, might I add. But its silence power is useful for stealth gameplay, which can be done really quite well in Frigate, the only level where this thing appears. In 9th place we have the silenced PP-7. Really, I wanted to put this weapon much higher on the list, but in an attempt to be objective and proper, it has to go here. The silenced PP-7 is identical to the already competent PP-7 in every way, except the silenced version is, as you may have guessed, silent. This increases its utility 100-fold, as it is now possible for the player to complete entire levels without raising the alarm. Not to mention, it makes you feel like James Bond. In 8th place we have the SMG, which is based off the Micro Uzi. The SMG is the fastest firing weapon in the game alongside the RCP-90. It has a nice 32-round magazine capacity and is often found in pairs, and a pair of SMGs is one of the most lethal things you'll ever encounter in this game. The SMG is very common in the levels where you find it, which means that ammo is always plentiful. To sum it up, I feel like the famous Todd Howard quote, "It just works," would be an understatement. The SMG is amazing. In 7th place we have the Cougar Magnum, which is based on the Ruger Blackhawk, a 1950s revolver based on the Single Action Army. The Cougar Magnum is very, very slow, even slower than the positively gangrenous shotgun, but makes up for this with laser accuracy and obscenely high damage, being able to one-shot pretty much every regular enemy in the game. It is also classed as a power weapon, which means it can shoot through doors, bulletproof glass, and even other enemies, and it has the highest penetration statistic in the game. The low capacity and fire rate can be limiting factors, but if you play around doors well, then you'll be able to control your enemy and get the most out of the Cougar Magnum, regardless of if you're dealing with a player or with NPC enemies. In 6th place we have the Moonraker Laser. The Moonraker laser has a high rate of fire, which when paired with the Cougar Magnum levels of damage makes this thing brutally powerful, especially in the hands of the god level Moonraker elites. It is also able to penetrate, although strangely it has a lower penetration score than the Cougar Magnum and the RCP, which, seems strange to me. The Moonraker laser's main advantage is that it has unlimited ammo and doesn't require reloading, which combined with its penetrative shots makes this a crowd control monster in single player, and a suppressive fire machine in multiplayer. In 5th place we have the Golden PP7. The Golden PP7 is a regular PP7 that fires golden bullets, which are able to kill every single enemy in the game in one shot, including plot armoured characters like Urumov on Silo and Trevelyan on Cradle. This one-shot kill capacity, coupled with the 7-round magazine and rapid semi-automatic fire, make this gun ridiculously powerful, especially compared with the regular Golden gun, which compared to this thing is like sending the guards a firm but polite letter requesting they please stop trying to kill you and go home. In 4th place we have the Silver PP7. The Silver PP7 is a regular PP7 but with the power, and crucially, the penetration power of the Cougar Magnum, which is what puts this thing above the Golden PP7, which cannot penetrate at all. The Silver PP7 effectively acts as a stat boost to the Cougar Magnum, as it's superior to the Magnum in every way except accuracy, although the PP7 is so accurate you'd be hard pressed to notice. The Silver PP7 may not have the one-shot ability, but in single player, most enemies die from one Magnum round anyway, so you won't have any issues on that front, and it opens up the possibility of penetrative shots which are superbly overpowered in this game. You might argue that the Golden PP7 is better on multiplayer, and I think that's true, but overall the Silver PP7 comes out on top here. In 3rd place we have the Proximity Mine. The Proximity Mine is only found in Depot in the single player missions, and in single player it's not especially useful, as like the remote mines, a good automatic weapon will do more damage with greater ease. Where the proximity mines really come into their own is in multiplayer. The proximity mines are absolutely disgusting here, as on the original N64, the resolution on split screen makes these things pretty much invisible, and it's no better on the new consoles. Proximity mines are a quick and easy way to multiply the game length of any given multiplayer match by at least 1000%. As if you die to your own mines, which happens all the time, you lose a point, effectively making any match dictated by a score last forever. The proximity mines are effectively a good way to destroy your relationship with anybody you choose to play with, and they are genuinely disgusting. And in my opinion, using proximity mines is worse than playing as Oddjob. In 2nd place we have the RCP-90, which is based, as you may have guessed from the name, on the P90. This is a controversial choice, as I think most people would have placed the RCP at the top of the list, but I don't think it's quite that good. The RCP does almost as much damage as the Cougar Magnum. Most guns do 1 damage per shot, the Cougar Magnum does 2, and the RCP does a ridiculous 1.8. Couple this insane damage with the fastest fire rate in the game, a ridiculous 80 round capacity, once again the best in the game, and accuracy that outclasses even the super accurate D5K, and you have an absolute beast. It also has the 2nd highest penetration power in the game, and on the rare occasion it does appear, it's sometimes paired, doubling your firepower. The RCP is hands down the best weapon for penetration, as the massive penetration score combined with the near bottomless magazine and the incredible fire rate mean that even if you don't know where your target is, you're still going to kill them. In 1st place, as the best weapon in the game, we have the US AR-33 assault rifle, which is based on the M16A1. The AR-33 isn't as powerful as the RCP, although it's still substantially more powerful than everything else. but it fires just as fast, has a massive zoom, which allows for picking off on long-range targets, which is something you'll find very useful on jungle and on caverns. The penetration power is also excellent, and the 3-round burst function allows you to hit ranged targets with incredible accuracy, while still having full auto on hand to lay down a blanket of suppression. The AR-33 and the RCP are like the Silence PP7 and the Silence D5K respectively. They are both comparable, and the latter is more lethal, but it doesn't make it better, and with Goldeneye's often long engagement ranges, the AR-33 in its versatility takes the cake for me. Trevelyan uses one in Cradle, and the Moonraker Elites use them in Aztec. If that's not good product placement, I don't know what is. Thank you everyone for watching the video. Remember to like, subscribe and comment. It costs you nothing and it's a great way to help out the channel. Stay safe and goodbye.